Business Show. I'm Laura, and this week on the show I wanted just to have a bit of a conversation about the current economic situation that we're all facing at the moment. I've had lots of conversations with clients recently, and they've expressed that those conversations have been really helpful, so I wanted just to extend that conversation here on the show. Now, I think everyone listening is going to be aware that we're living through an tricky economic time right now. Here in the UK, I think pretty much every single day there is a negative story in the news about the cost of living, the rises in interest rates, inflation, the pound tanking, all that kind of stuff. And this is like the backdrop that we are operating in right now. And I think that it brings certain challenges, but we don't have to let those completely derail us. And I think there's certain ways that we can get our heads around the situation and just make sure that we feel good about where we are ourselves and our businesses as well, and how we operate in this economic climate basically. But like I said, I've had some conversations with clients. They've really expressed that that's been helpful, and I just wanted to chat through some of the things that I've talked to them about as well. And to be fair, everything I'm going to talk about today is actually relevant whether or not we have the current economic situation we're facing going on right now or not. There really are things that you can be thinking about anytime, basically. So completely relevant at any time, no matter what's going on. So I think the first thing to consider is really getting very clear on what your financial reality looks like. Now, again, we hear a lot of the negative news stories, and that's certainly not to discount them, and certainly what I don't want to be saying in this episode of the show is to somehow not acknowledge or recognise that this is a very desperately difficult situation for some people and some families. By no means do I want to brush over that or not recognise that at all. And obviously I am coming in this conversation with my background and my privileges and advantages. That does have an impact, and every situation is going to be different. But like I said, I don't think this is really helpful to get very clear on your own financial situation, both within your business and within your personal home life. So for me, in my business, it's getting very clear on what my cash flow looks like, what my income needs are, how that pans out over the next few months, being very clear on what my personal financial situation looks like, and just getting very clear on what the reality of that is, because that's the reality from which we need to make decisions. Getting crystal clear on what that's like, that's the first thing anyone should be doing. And like I say, that's something that we should all be doing regardless, but I think it's really helpful to have that very clear picture. And again, what we might find is that actually our situation is not as desperate as what we're hearing in the news. And that's obviously really good. Or we might find that actually we need to take some action. And no matter what that tells us, like it means that we've got that awareness and we can be intentional about what we're doing with our own financial situation. So I think getting really clear on what that looks like is key. And like I say, for me and my business, I use a cash flow spreadsheet. That enables me to put in things like payment plans, retainers and group program payments, and everything maps out. And I get to see, and obviously my expenses and how much I pay myself. And that allows me to make decisions going forward and to really see what that looks like. So that's been really key for me. So understanding what your own financial situation actually is without all of the fear and anxiety that we might feel from external things that we're hearing. And again, not invalidating any of that, but like our financial situation is our financial situation basically. So getting really clear on that. And then the next thing is really remembering, and this is another extension of that really, is everyone out there's financial situation is different. Now, if you're feeling anxious and scared about people not wanting to work with you, whether or not people can afford to work with you as a coach and all of that kind of stuff, one of the things that I always say to people is everyone's financial situation is different. Now, what tends to happen, and again, big disclaimer here, I'm not wanting to be offensive in this, but I feel like this is just the reality of it. Generally speaking, the people who would be purchasing £1,000 plus coaching packages tend to be the kind of people who, and again, not wanting to be disrespectful anyway, but tend to be the kind of people who will not be negatively impacted as much by this situation. The kind of people who have that level of disposable income that they want to spend on their own personal development, generally speaking, they will be in a position to weather the storm more. And I tend to think, and unfortunately, in a lot of the political and social environments that we are operating in, people who have money tend to always have money. There is a certain subset of the population where the people who have money will always have money, and Personally, I've got a lot of issues with that. I think we should have much more equitable distribution of money and resources and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, that tends to be the reality. So I think when people get really worried about whether or not people are still going to be able to pay for their coaching packages, generally speaking, the people who would have been buying those coaching packages are not the people who are going to be experiencing severe financial hardship. Now, how we want to serve people in our business who might be experiencing that and still be able to serve those people, that's something that we might want to consider as well, depending on our business. But again, our business is our business and we get to serve who we need to serve and know that other people are around to serve other people as well. It's really a big part of that conversation. But ultimately, the message from this is everyone's financial situation is different. Don't make assumptions about what other people's financial situations are. Your financial situation is not reflective of everybody else's. And there's so many intricacies and different situations that people have that we can't even comprehend. So getting yourself caught up and running away with yourself, worrying that no one's going to buy your coaching package is doing yourself a disservice and them, because you don't know what their financial situation is and you don't know what their priorities are. So I always try and not take myself to that place, because honestly, everyone's financial situation is different. So we need to remember that, even though there's lots of doom and gloom, we need to remember that everyone's financial situation is their own. So that's the next thing to consider. And then again, a bit of an extension of that one, would it make sense to diversify our income in any way? Now, this is a very individual thing for each person's business, but it might make sense to create more avenues for income to find you, to create low to mid cost offers. Again, it's not going to be right for everyone's business, and I need to be really clear on this because it's not always the magic bullet that we think it's going to be, but for some people's business that can make sense. And again, depending on like how you want to show up and at what point you want to meet people in terms of how you support them, like there could be opportunities there. Again, like pretty much all of us, I think in business, we're going to be creating content for free. We're going to be helping people for free. I'm always trying to think like, how can I support people at lots of different levels? I create a lot of stuff, including the show, which is completely free. So I know that there's always stuff out there that's free for people, but I still, for example, might want to create something low cost, or I might want to do something else or whatever. There's like a whole range of what that can look like. But it's a good question to ask yourself, would it make sense to diversify your income, to have perhaps some more accessible financial options? And again, that doesn't necessarily have to mean like creating something passive. It might mean, do you need to offer an extended payment plan on your coaching package? Like, how can you make these things more accessible? So that's something just to bear in mind and consider as well. And like I say, it's very individual, because what's going to be right for your business is your business, and it's not always the magic bullet that you think it's going to be. But generally speaking, I think diversifying your income can make sense. But again, very individual thing to consider. And then the next thing we want to think about is, how are we demonstrating the value of our services and what it is that we offer? Again, this is relevant like anytime. All of these are relevant anytime. But how are we getting very clear on communicating the value and the return on investment that people are going to get from working with us? Now, return on investment isn't always a monetary thing. The guys who I'm talking to, you guys out there, your return on investment for people is going to be quality of life. It's going to be health. It's going to be career. It's going to be all of this other stuff. And those are still very strong return on investments. Now, how do we communicate the value of those? And how can we give evidence to demonstrate the value of those things? Getting really clear on the value, getting really clear on the outcomes in our sales copy, when we're having sales conversations, discovery calls. If you've got testimonials to back those up and proof to back those up, use it. If you haven't, think about your own experiences. What can you talk about from your own experiences? Because that's evidence as well, like something that you've gone through is evidence too. And just get really clear, because people are probably going to be more careful about making these decisions. So it's really useful to just be very clear on what the value is. And also something I just want to add in here that's just popped into my head is, I think, to be honest, I've probably delayed talking about this in the show. And I've had lots of conversations with clients, because it's one of those topics where like no one wants to talk about something that's negative. Do you know what I mean? I don't really want to talk about something that's negative, but it's like it just feels like the elephant in the room, and I don't think we're doing ourselves, like denying that it exists. And again, this is like a bit of that thing where, oh, it's not very high vibe, but this is what's been coming at my head, like it's not a very high vibe thing to talk about the economic situation, but like you can't ignore this shit. It's like you can't ignore it and it's going to go away. Like, we need to recognise that this is the backdrop into which we're operating, and actually that doesn't have to be a negative thing. I think we can just recognise it and help recognise that's where we're operating, and actually make changes to how we do things practically, and also how we do things like from a mindset point of view. So I just wanted to drop that in there because, yeah, I feel like I probably have held myself back from talking about it a little bit because it's not the most happy thing to talk about, but actually I think there's some really positive things. So just not acknowledging it is actually not helpful. I think we all need to acknowledge it because it's the reality that we're in, but that doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's our individual financial reality either. So that kind of brings me on to more of the mindset, spiritual, manifesting side of things, because it does, honestly, if you've been feeling anxious and scared and worried about finances, I completely hear you, and I don't think you should feel ashamed for that. It is a tricky situation that we are in right now. And like I say, just switching on the radio or looking online, the negative stories are there, which again comes back to getting really clear on what your own financial situation looks like and taking steps to make sure that is robust and healthy. But I think from like a mindset point of view, something that we can all do, and something that I've been doing, and again, like sometimes I'm like, oh, this sounds like a little bit cringy, and not wanting to, because like I say, I think we have to acknowledge that this is the backdrop. But for me personally, I've just been trying to really recognise like all of the existing abundance that I already have. It can be very easy to get into a glass half empty perspective when all this stuff's going on, but actually rooting myself. And again, I probably need to do an episode of the show where, and I don't know if this is a thing, but it's like energetically I try and find spaces for myself to inhabit energetically that feel good. So a space that I've been trying to energetically inhabit that feels good is this place of, I've got all this existing abundance that feels really good, and I'm really grateful for all of that, and just being in this place of feeling like how good that feels. And what tends to, like, when I was reflecting on what my own reaction to the situation's been, because I had a bit of a wobble in September. I was like, oh God, fucking hell, everything's going to shit. Oh my God. And my kind of reaction is, okay, what can I do practically, from a very practical point of view? What can I do? And then from like a mindset point of view, how can I support myself? So I started working through Gala Darling's Cash Money, is it Cash Money Honey? One of her programs that I bought, which is around manifesting money and just improving your money mindset. I'm also in Denise Duffield Thomas's Lucky Bitch Money Bootcamp, which I need to go back through some of the resources. It's finding the existing resources and things that I've got hold of, and really and looking at what those things are and tapping into some of that and just refreshing my mindset around things like that. Energetically inhabiting this space of, I've already got all this wonderful abundance in my life in lots of different forms, and rooting into that a little bit, because I think what financial worries do for a lot of us is that it's a fundamental safety thing. Like when I've reflected on my money mindset, like money for me often very much about safety, and that's a very fundamental thing. So when that gets shaky, like it's very, like for me it gets very scary and I feel very anxious, because it is literally security and safety for me and my family. So being able to really root into that has been really helpful, and root into the energy of that, and then take practical steps from that place. I think when you're taking the practical steps from a place of like real fear and lack, it becomes difficult. And that's sometimes when I think when we get into selling from that space, we can come across as being a bit desperate, like finding these places of where we can inhabit ourselves. And like I say, going back to the very thing that I said at the start about understanding what the reality of your own financial situation, if the reality of your own financial situation is very negative, you need to figure out what needs to happen to shift that. And obviously there's a whole range of what that might look like for you, figuring out what that is. But like I say, if the reality of that isn't so bad, but you're still feeling the fear and the lack, like finding a really helpful energetic space to inhabit. And like I say, for me, that is really about, I've got so much abundance already. This is the ways that I'm safe already. This is all the things that I've got. And then taking action from that energetic space has been really helpful. So those are just a few of the things that I found useful. Those are like some of the things that I've had conversations with other clients and I think people in my business. And I think it's like, we can't ignore that this is going on. We can't stick our heads in the sand and pretend it's not happening. I don't think that it's useful to do so, even on an energetic manifesting level. I just don't think it's useful to ignore it. But I think what we can do is we can take some really practical steps. We can really look at things in our businesses. Like I say, I've been looking at my business really carefully, really acknowledging the fact that this year has been very much like very chill, and I have not done a lot of stuff. This year has not been like a big business push through year for me at all. It's been very much, as I've talked about on the show, This year for me has been very much about getting stuff done in the house, and like it's really, the expansion for me this year has not been in my business, it's been in lots of other areas of my life, which still have insanely incredible value. But it's helped me take a step back and look at where my business is at, look at what's working, what's not working. And from this reality that we are in, it's probably going to last for a little while. And just to say as well, like, even if we end up in a recession, like, they don't last forever. These situations come and go. I think when I started my business back in 2012, like, we were on the tail end of coming out of a recession. These things are going to come and go in our businesses. And this is why I'm always banging on about sustainability, longevity, discoverability, like all of these things that are not particularly sexy. They're not particularly sexy, guys, but these are the kind of things that are going to help us get through situations like this. And it's like, how can us and our businesses thrive through these situations? But yeah, it's like nothing lasts forever. This financial situation is transient. It is not going to last forever. So that's another useful thing to remember. And also, like, your dreams and your aspirations and the things that you want to change in your life, we don't want to be putting that shit on hold. Like, for a lot of us, we had to put things on hold over the pandemic. If you've got the means to do, now can be a fantastic time for growth and for doing new things and for expansion. It's the world that's telling us that it's not, but we need to look at our own reality, our own dreams and hopes and aspirations for ourselves, and we can take action from that space. Still recognising that everything else is going on, so not ignoring it, but not allowing it to stop us if we still want to take action. So I really hope that's been helpful. I would love to know if that has been useful in any way. I'd love to know if anyone has been having any worries about this stuff, if that's helped alleviate anything, if that's helped shift anything for you. I'd really love to know. But I really hope that has been helpful and has given you some things to think about. And yeah, I just hope that you're all doing well. And as we come in towards the very end of the year, God, it's really like crazy, isn't it? That we're like almost towards the end of the year. I'm quite excited as well because, like I said, this year for me in business has been, I've not expanded in business very much. It's very much been like business as usual, and that's actually fine. I think that's what I've needed while other areas of my life have expanded. But I feel like 2023 is going to be a different year business-wise, but we shall see what happens. So guys, I really hope you're doing well. Take care. Let me know if this has been useful. Do share it if it's been useful. Share it with other people who you might think would find it helpful. And I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye.